Damon couldn't be bothered with Enzo's sarcasm and anger, and he decided to ignore him. He picked up chicken sandwiches and fruit juice from the canteen for himself and Melanie for lunch. He sat with her, and they hungrily ate their sandwiches in silence. Melanie thoroughly enjoyed her meal and had mayonnaise on her cheek when she was finished. Damon gently wiped it away with a paper napkin.
Look at the two of them, all over each other.
Someone in the canteen snorted in disgust.
Doesn't he know how mad Enzo is with him?
What are you going on about?
A woman on her own demanded.
Don't be so hard on Melanie, just because she doesn't speak.
The students consistently picked on Melanie because of her inability to speak, even though she did her best to get along with everyone.
What happened to her that she doesn't speak?
Someone whispered.
Did something happen to her when she was a baby?
Damon ignored the whispers and refused to watch when Melanie tried to explain in her sign language. The one thing he had learned when he had stolen food from the grocery store was that when someone was desperate, they would do anything to survive, even if it meant sacrificing their dignity or taking a chance with the law. Since there was no class that afternoon, Damon and Melanie parted ways after lunch. Melanie went back to the girls' dormitory, and they agreed they would meet up for breakfast the following day. The next day finally arrived. Melanie got there early and eagerly waited for Damon at the canteen's entrance. He smiled when he saw her waiting for him. It felt good to spend time with someone as unpretentious as Melanie. They found that they enjoyed each other's company, and they agreed to meet again the following day. Eating together in the canteen quickly became a regular occurrence. As the days flew by, Damon found he always arrived after she did, and he felt embarrassed that she had to wait for him. So, on the third evening, to show how sorry he was, he went to the grocery store and bought her a bag full of fruit and snacks, hoping they would be something she would have chosen for herself. When he wasn't meeting with Melanie or studying for university, Damon spent his time learning how to run the family business. He often sought Thomas's counsel during those few days as he eagerly learned what was expected from him by the Serafino family. Over the following week, he also noticed that Enzo's threats seemed to have fallen away, which made him lose respect for the rich kid. 4 days after her birthday party, Tiffany woke up early and decided to drag Abigail with her to the campus stationery shop.
Why did you want to come here so early?
Abigail protested.
What's gotten into you?
Tiffany ignored her friend's complaints as she looked around. After a few moments, she stumbled across a box of folded paper stars.
Do you know how to fold paper to make stars like these?
Abigail scrunched her forehead in concern and touched her friend's temple as if testing for a temperature.
What on earth's going on with you? You're a grown woman, not a kid. Why are you interested in stupid paper stars?
But I want to learn how to make these.
I think you've got too much time on your hands. What's happening? Are you in love?
Her eyes narrowed as she studied her friend and continued.
You do realize that everyone will laugh at you if they see you making little paper stars in class.
Tiffany didn't say anything. She wouldn't admit to being in love, even if she was. The moment was interrupted as a news segment blared on one of the store's TVs mounted on a wall. Tiffany's thoughts went to her sister, Teresa, and the important day it was going to be for her company. Teresa had been in a wonderful mood for the past few days because her pharmaceutical company would be making an important announcement that day. Teresa had dropped a few hints on social media about the breakthrough her company had made, which had encouraged almost $10 million in investment. Tiffany, along with many other invested parties, eagerly awaited the news release. Her eyes remained glued to the TV, but when the business news was finally announced, the story about her sister's company was not at all what she had been expecting. She stood wide-eyed in disbelief. As she stared at the news, she started to feel lightheaded. A moment later, she collapsed to the floor.
Tiffany, what's the matter?
Abigail shouted as her friend passed out.
Tiffany! Tiffany!
She yelled as she dialed 911 for an ambulance. The ambulance arrived quickly, and the medic examined Tiffany. He inserted an intravenous fluid drip for hydration and confirmed that she would be okay. She had suffered a minor shock, which was nothing a day's rest in hospital couldn't cure. Damon happened to be walking past as Tiffany was being loaded into the back of the ambulance on a gurney. He rushed up to the concerned Abigail.
What's happened?
He asked her quietly. Abigail had no time for him and was annoyed because he was fast becoming a good friend to Tiffany.
It's none of your business, loser. You need to stay away from her. She's far too good for the likes of you. There's absolutely nothing you can do that would be of any help.
Damon felt annoyed at Abigail's berating attitude, but knew she only treated him so rudely because she was jealous of his friendship with Tiffany. What she didn't know was how wealthy he was, and he felt relief at that. A few days earlier, while discussing a project with Thomas, he had seen a financial report and discovered that Abigail's family business hadn't been doing well for some time. He knew that 3 months earlier, her family had started handing out free food to those less fortunate, and it was hurting their income. He didn't know if Abigail understood the situation or whether she just preferred to live with her head in the sand. He also wasn't sure how she would react if she found out that his family had secretly bought the grocery store from her father and saved her family from bankruptcy. Abigail climbed into the back of the ambulance with her friend and reached for her hand to hold it. But as she opened Tiffany's hand, she found several little scrunched up paper stars in her friend's palm.
Ugh, this is ridiculous.
She exclaimed as she grabbed them and threw them onto the floor.
What the hell?
Meanwhile, Damon had walked into the stationery shop and looked at the TV. He watched the news about Teresa's company in disbelief. He thought as his eyes widened in shock. He understood why Tiffany had fainted. The news announcer stated that Teresa, the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, had received large investments after hinting that her company had discovered a rare element that had incredible healing properties. The announcer continued to say that Teresa had made the claim at a press conference held in the Hillwood Medical Association's offices that morning. However, a professional gemologist had stated the element was a fake and had exposed Teresa during the conference. All the investors had since dumped their shares and announced that they were going to bring lawsuits against the Vandergeld family. It appeared that the Vandergeld family faced not only public humiliation, but bankruptcy as well. Damon had given the Californium to Tiffany, but he hadn't given her any advice on what to do with it. It hadn't felt like it was his place to do so. He now realized she had given it to Teresa to use to attract investment to her company.
It's no wonder Tiffany fainted.
He thought sadly as he dialed Thomas. Thomas answered on the first ring. He had also been watching the news and knew exactly why Damon was calling.
Mr. Hemsworth, the Californium I gave you can't be fake unless the Serafino family is buying it from someone who's manufacturing it under false pretenses. But I'm sure that can't be the case, because they would have been exposed. You know how the Serafinos run things. Nobody would dare to sell them counterfeits of any kind.
He was silent for a second, but before Damon had a chance to say anything, he added,
I'll find out what's going on and get back to you.
No, there's no need for you to go digging around. I think I know who's behind this. It's got to be Enzo.
He thought angrily.
What? Who? And why?
Thomas asked. He was livid that someone had dared to cause trouble like that, especially when it would have a backlash on the Serafino family.
I'd be more than happy to deal with this.
Damon let out a deep sigh.
It's a long story, but it seems that they've made their move. It can only be Enzo after the drama we've had the other day. I'll have to think about how I'm going to deal with this situation, because I can't let him get away with it.
He thought. Somewhere in a club in Hillwood, Enzo lay on a couch feeling on top of the world. He examined the piece of Californium he held in his hand.
Anyone who dares to come up against me will lose everything.
He stated, laughing. As he said that, his cell phone rang. It was Damon.
Well, well, well. If it isn't Damon Hemsworth.
Damon got straight to the point.
I'm assuming you're holding the real piece of rare metal.
He asked, sounding disgusted. Enzo scratched his head.
I've no idea what you're talking about.
He replied smugly.
But I did hear you gave a piece of fake metal to the Vandergeld family. What a moron. I can't believe you would stoop to such levels just to go out with a woman.
Oh, you don't need to worry about me. I'm going to retrieve the piece of metal. In fact, since you already have it, I'm going to sell it to you instead.
You've got to be kidding me.
Enzo was astonished at Damon's audacity, he thought. He knew he had the upper hand because he was familiar with how the wealthy operated while Damon certainly wasn't.
But I don't have it. So how are you going to sell it to me?
He asked smugly.
And if I did already have it, why would I buy it from you? At least I've managed to humiliate myself.
He thought.
The Vandagals won't think very highly of him after this, and I'm about to earn a whole lot of money.
There were a few moments of silence. Enzo started to feel uneasy, but he was confident that his plan would work.
So how much do you think you're going to sell it for?
He asked sarcastically. Damon chuckled.
Well, I suppose it all depends on how much the Laurier family is worth.
What do you mean by that?
Enzo scowled as he replied.
Something's not right.
He thought.
I'll be at your place within 2 hours to collect every cent your family owns.
Damon threatened. He ended the call.